Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to our Meet the Maker chat. I'm Dave and this is Maria.
Hi.
Hi there, Maria. Can you just explain a little bit about your shop and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Of course, yes. So my shop is Turn the Page Design, and I am a paper crafter and designer. And I feel like I've got two sides of my shop. So one side of me specialises in making paper flowers, and I use them to create unique artworks. And then the other side is books. I absolutely love books. And I repurpose old, damaged, shabby books and use their book pages to print my artworks onto.
Brilliant, lovely.
So how about you, Dave? Can you introduce yourself and explain a bit about your shop and how you became a woodcarver?
Sure, yeah. Well, I'm Dave. My shop is called Woodwyrm Carvings, and I primarily carve wooden spoons. These are all hand carved, but I also make other wooden wares such as shrink pots, and I carve little birds and carve little dragons, but I also do other sort of more figurative carvings as well. So regarding getting into being a sort of wood carver, this goes back about 16, 17 years, something like that. And I picked up some chisels and just got the urge to have a play and have a go. And it just kind of started there, really. It kind of evolved and got introduced to spoon carving about 13, 14 years ago. And then it just took off from there, became addicted, really. I did. And it's taken over from there, shall we say. Yeah, yeah. So with your designs then, Maria, where do you get your inspiration from?
So for my flower pictures, I would say I get my inspiration from nature. I kind of feel like because I'm working with flowers, I think that's quite inspiring. So I make scenes of nature and I work on different flower pictures and have lots of ideas for more like that in the future as well.
Great.
So how about you? Because your products in your shop, they're really beautiful with lots of different colours and designs. Where do you find your inspiration?
Our inspiration comes from all over the place, I must admit. Historical pieces and other makers as well. I mean, there's a great sort of tradition and wealth of history of spoon carving around the world with varying sort of degrees of design and functionality but also it's great just to sort of experiment and play about with ideas as well. But certainly myth and folklore and history, it really helps. It does. Certainly when it comes to doing the more intricate sort of spoon shapes and designs and decorating the spoons as well, because you can kind of do all sorts of different things. You can get carried away with it sometimes. You can, but it's nice to experiment and learn at the same time. You must find that with yours as well. I mean, those flowers look really lifelike. Are they difficult to make?
Thank you. So I'd say the technique and how to learn it is very simple. So each flower will start off life as a spiral of paper because I use the technique of rolled paper flowers. So it does what it says on the tin. So I've got an example of that actually. So this spiral, the different edges to the spiral will determine what shape the flower is. So this one will make a rose that looks just like that. And then say one that's a spiky flower comes from a spiked spiral. So this makes like a water lily-like shape. So I said that it's quite simple to pick up, but it can be quite fiddly. So it's just getting all your fingers and everything coordinated to avoid those nasty glue gun burns. And I'd say because it's very simple to make the paper flowers. But it's taken me a long time really to perfect the technique and make it my own. So it's really simple to roll a flower. So that would be sort of a regular rolled flower. But what I like to do is just add in some extra steps just to open up the petals and just make them that little bit more unique. So that's the difference. So with all of mine, I just add in this extra step and it just makes them look that little bit more lifelike. So thank you for picking up on that. That's lovely.
Well, no, they look amazing. They look really nice. They do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I've seen that you've got a lot of colourful projects in your Etsy shop, lots of pots. How is it that you get your colour into your pots and what do you use?
There's different methods for painting, different types of medium. I use primarily something called milk paint, which you can get in either a powdered form or a pre-mixed form. And it adheres to the wood really nicely. It's quick drying. It's very durable as well. And what I tend to do is give it all a coat of paint, and then to reveal the tool marks, I use some wire wool just to rub off the sort of top layer, and it really highlights the tool marks, because everything I do is sort of knife finished, so there's no sanding or anything. And similarly on paintwork on the spoons. And it's just nice just to add a little bit of colour, because wood varies so much in coloration. Birch, sycamore can be quite plain, so it's really nice just to decorate things a little bit. It does. Of course, we can do a little bit of chip carving in it as well, whereby you remove little sections of the wood with a very small blade. Should be better on that one. A little bit of chip carving in its sort of simplest form. And then you can also do something called coal roasting. If I can find this spoon. There we go. So this is where you incise a pattern into the actual wood, and then you rub a fine powder across it so it goes into the grooves, and then you add a bit of oil, and the design really stands out. It's something I've only played with a little bit. You can get very intricate, like basket weave designs and patterns, but it's all part of a learning and sort of experimentation process, which is really enjoyable and keeps the work very varied. It does. Yeah. So with your flowers, there's obviously a great passion there for nature and things as well. Have you spent a long time sort of developing and learning your craft?
Yes, so it's probably taken me a couple of years to get to the point where I am now, where I'd be just really confident just to very quickly roll a flower. And funnily enough, it's those little extra bits that take longer. So what I mentioned before about bending the petals a little bit and not being a bit too heavy-handed. So it's just those little extra flares that just take the time. And then to create a piece, it's so dependent on what it is I've got in my head that I want to design. So whether or not it's coming up with a really simple design or an intricate one. So it's working with what flowers work best together to get that particular image that I want to create. And I've totally lost what I was going to say.
Trial and error then, when you're coming up with a design, it's getting things work together nicely.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. And not everything works, and not everything ends the way that you think it's going to. So you might have a design, well, me especially, I have a design in my head, and the end product is more often than not more beautiful than I thought it would be, but look somewhat different.
Yeah, very, very similar here. You start off with an idea to do something, and because of the sort of natural materials, it can vary and change the design quite a little bit. It can. Do you have a specific place where you work?
My dining room table. Yes.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
That's right. So once dinner's all cleared away, I'll clean up the dining room table, and that'll be my space to work. So it's not very exciting, I'm afraid. I dream of the day I'll have a studio all to myself, where I can shut off the world and just get my head down and just do my creations. But that's a dream for one day. How about you? Where do you work?
Sorry. I do a workshop. It was. I converted the end of the garage into a workspace. So yeah, I mean, when I was setting up the business 3 years ago, I needed somewhere where I could just focus and just focus on the work itself, make a mess in there, because you produce quite a lot of shavings and chippings, certainly when you're axing out, and you could just shut the door on it then and walk away from it. So prior to that, I was paddling shavings all around the house, and not ideal. So but of course, with the sort of development of the business, I offer tuition now as well. So I need somewhere, physical space to teach, which is kind of develops a little bit as well. Is that something you maybe thought of for in the future?
I would definitely love to get into doing workshops and teaching people how to do different paper crafts. Because I also do hearts as well, for heart garlands, and that's something that's really simple but really effective. And I love the idea of somebody coming in and making something from nothing, so going away with a piece that they've made themselves, because I think that that's something quite special. Do you find that that's similar in your workshops?
Yeah, it's very rewarding. I've got no background in teaching or anything, and I wasn't really sure how it was going to go. When I did York Open Studios back in 2018, I had a lot of people asking, do you teach? Well, I hadn't considered it, but I thought we'll give it a go. Set up some sessions and then developed a real love for it. Just meeting different people and seeing people's faces kind of lighten up throughout the session as they're, revealing something that they can hopefully use. I try and obviously encourage people to use whatever it is they make. But what I do throughout the sessions is I do a little demonstration at the start, and then I guide them through the entire process from basically a small branch or section of wood all the way through to a finished or nearly finished spoon. Because everything I carve is green, it's all still fresh, so it's then got to dry out once the session's finished. So then sort of go back and people can then finish it off at their leisure. But it's nice when people leave with a smile on their face. It's something I've learned to really enjoy.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Where do you get your wood from that you use yourself and for your tuition?
I initially got in contact with some local tree surgeons, which has been really useful. And then gradually, certainly over the last few years, I've made connections with people who've been for tuition and said, oh yeah, I've got my own woodland. So that's been lovely. It has been really, really nice, and little connections, because you, a bit like you do craft fairs, you get talking to all sorts of different people. I occasionally get emails or texts out of the blue saying, I've got some wood, do you want some, Dave? And people just drop it off on the drive. So it's great for me. Raw materials, it used to be such a problem to get hold of, but just making those little connections, it really helps. And obviously I carve everything fresh, as I say, but I carve most species, native species, like birch and sycamore. The fruit woods are really nice, cherries really nice. Plum, it's nice to get a different variation in colour. As I said, birch and sycamore can be quite pale. You can use some of the plums, and cherries can have some really nice coloration, so you can create these lovely sort of two-tone effects. But to be honest, I'll have a go at most things. I will, just to see what it's like. Sometimes I say that the wood can really inspire the design. It can. So yeah, chatting about inspiration and design with your passion for books and your quotes that I've seen that you do, where does your inspiration for those come from?
So with my book quotes, they tend to come from books that I love, and they are classic book quotes at the moment. So the first ones came about because I did a Halloween craft fair. So I've got a gothic horror set of quotes, Dracula, Frankenstein, and Jekyll and Hyde. And I do the quotes as a collaborative piece with my husband, who is a partner in my shop and is a graphic designer. So it's just basically books that I love, he loves, and then we just use the words or the style of the book to create the quote. So one of my favourite books is Peter Pan. So I've done a Peter Pan and then an Alice in Wonderland quote. So the Peter Pan one is beautiful because it's very typically British. It says, would you like an adventure now, or would you like a cup of tea first? Or shall we have our tea first? And because I love that quote from the book, we've just got some different pictures on there, and it just sort of, the words speak for themselves, and it just sort of leads to the design. And I've got some romantic quotes as well, because I was doing a Valentine's craft fair, so just been preparing for things like that. But it's a bit of a different story at the moment because of lockdown and not really having craft fairs in the same way that we do or did before. So I've just got lots of quotes that I would like to do. So I would like to start making like a Shakespeare set of quotes. So my favourite quote is from A Midsummer Night's Dream, and it just reminds me of my little girl, because I've got a toddler who is little, she always has been, but my goodness me, is she fierce. She's got, she's determined and headstrong, and the quote is something along the lines of, and though she be but little, she be fierce. So that sums her up perfectly. Oh,
brilliant, brilliant.
So when I was looking on your Etsy shop, I came across some very interesting pots, and you call them shrink pots. Can you explain what that means?
Yes, yes. The shrink pots are basically, you take a log or section of wood, you can then hollow it out. This is whilst the wood is still fresh. You then hollow it out, use a series of chisels, and you'll see there's a base I've fitted inside it. You'll see the light coming through because it's just loosely fitted at the moment within a groove that you put in a base. And then you make the base slightly smaller. This is out of oak. And then as the wood dries out, which can take a couple of weeks before it's fully dried out, it then tightens onto the base, hence the name shrink pot. So there's no gluing or anything. This one's a little bit of an odd shape, so they can dry slightly oddly sometimes. The idea of these is to get the bases quite a good fit initially, and then the wood will kind of stretch around it as it dries and fully tighten onto it. So then once they're fully dry, you can then add lids and things. And because of the nature of the shape, the lids only kind of fit one way, so they are airtight as well. So great for little dried goods, herbs and things like that, other sort of dried foodstuffs. And you can make them any sort of size as well. You can. Again, it's nice just to experiment and play around. Plain pots are nice. I like to decorate them. But also I've got this really nice birch at the moment, which has some lovely sort of coloration. And it's quite nice just to do these sort of natural little pots with the knots and little imperfections. You might call them imperfections. I quite like them, it's but it's nice just to play around with these things. It is.
Makes them more unique.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I really enjoy it, and it's nice to work on something a little bit different. I've got quite a varied range of things that I produce, that I make, and that really keeps me interested in what I'm doing. So when I'm going down to the workshop, I have a nice little plan for the day. What shall I do today? Right, I'm going to have a little section of pots I'm going to make up, or we'll have a go at some cooking spoons, something like this. Again, these are all out of birch, and this is the sort of thing that I teach people how to do during their tuition sessions. So over sort of 3 hours or so, you'll learn to make something like that. These are all still quite damp. I need a couple of weeks to dry out, and then I'll go back over with the knives that I use. I might as well show you while I've got them out. So a straight knife for doing the majority of the knife work, and then I've got the bent blades that I use for doing the actual bowls as well. But these are such a versatile tool as well. You can do all sorts with them. But we spent, quite a number of years developing the skills, and still got all my fingers. So it's yeah, you got to be very careful, obviously, when you're working with wood and sharp tools. So just interesting with your quotes and your book passion. Have you got any ideas for the future?
I have many ideas. As I said before, I've got a toddler, so I don't always have a lot of time. But I would like to, because I've got two different sort of aspects to my shop, I want to go down with my book quotes, the Shakespeare route and classic quotes from there, and just find more books that I love and more quotes from the books that I've already got quotes from. Because there's so many, it's so hard to choose. It's just when finding a quote, I find one that just speaks to me, and I think that's the one that I want.
Yeah.
And then regarding my paper flowers, so at the moment I'm really inspired by my garden, because I've taken to gardening during lockdown, and I've just got so many plants growing that I've never really grown before, even as simple as lavender. So I think I'm going to try and do some more flower pictures from flowers, and I've also got in the background a passion for quilling, because what I do is a form of quilling, rolling my flowers. Quilling is just paper rolling, so I'm always had in the back of my head I want to add that to my pictures too. So I'm just quietly in the background learning how to do that and how to incorporate that into my pictures, because I think that will just make them just that much extra special.
Yeah, it's nice to have a
how about yes, definitely. So how about you? I've seen some on your Instagram and social media, you've been really busy making some absolutely gorgeous things and some really intricate carvings with your handles of your spoons. I've also noticed some little dragons appearing, which I absolutely adore.
Well, this is
Have you got, yes, have you got any more, were those something that are a new idea in a new collection? Have you got any more ideas for the future for more?
Yeah, the dragons kind of evolved from these little bird carvings I was doing, just sort of simple free-hanging birds. Again, I was just trying to find a way of using up some offcuts, so just little small sections of wood. It's quite nice to use those up somehow. So yeah, but the dragons evolved from that. I've carved quite a few birds and just thought, right, what shall I try next? And then, yeah, I came up with a few different dragon ideas, and then thought I could put some wings in those. Yeah, that's kind of evolved, and I've got a few of those in my shop at the moment. But certainly for the future, I've got a few more ideas along those sorts of carvings and all sorts of sculptural carvings, because that's what I did initially when I first got into it all. I was carving things like this, things in the round, more sort of sculptural stuff. So it's nice to have a variation of interests. A bit like yourself, over lockdown, I've spent a lot of time carving spoons, so I've got quite a variety now. So it's nice to try different carvings. It's generally always working with my hands and just coming up with different ideas for stuff. And you just never know what's around the corner half the time as well, I find.
I agree.
Yeah, things can happen by sort of happy accident, and perhaps a few failures along the way as well. That's all part of a learning process.
Definitely. Not all of mine make it to the end point. I do have a lot of failures.
It happens, unfortunately, but you know, it's all part of the learning process. I have found that
absolutely,
even now after 13, 14 years of carving spoons, if your head's not in the right space, you soon end up with a broken spoon before you finished it. So it does still happen, unfortunately. But I find you've got to be in the right frame of mind to work on certain ideas and certain things. You do. You must find that yourself, do you?
Yes, absolutely. I've got to be in the right headspace and have enough time to develop new ideas, because that's what takes the longest. Is just knowing what I want to do, but how do I do it, and what do I need?
As you say, you've got a toddler, and you must just have a sort of limited time to actually physically do stuff.
Very much so. So I have, on the days that I look after her, which is just nap time, and then just in the evenings and at weekends. So not very much time. So I tend to do sort of designing and new projects when I've got a longer space to do it. So maybe over a weekend. But when I'm doing a commission, those can take weeks. So it's just lots of trialing and error and things like that. So it's just picking up the time and making the most of what I've got, because I know I'm limited in my time. So I just crack on, get it done. A bit of pressure's good. So I wanted to say it's been really lovely having a chat and getting to know about you and your shop, and what you do. So I think we've waffled long enough. So if anyone's interested in what we do, please have a look at our Etsy shops. So I think we'll just say goodbye.
Thank you very much, Maria. Nice chatting with you.
Thank you. Lovely chatting with you. Bye.
Cheers. See ya. Bye.
I totally lost what I was saying. You're only like, oh, what am I actually saying? I'm sorry. I got distracted with the adventure. And should we have our tea?
Got a little
I don't know, I'm about to hiccup. Sorry.
And relax.